Hi, everybody. Let's talk about the summer solstice, which is on the 20th of June. So, this is the longest day of the year. We know that. But it also represents this point of balance because in the southern hemisphere, it's the darkest day of the year. So, our solstices are this point that really brings us into a reflection on balance and harmony and figuring out how we work with the polarities in this world. So, when we in the northern hemisphere experience this longest day of the year, means right, the light is so strong. And we are also experiencing right now, we're in solar maximum. It's an 11-year cycle. We're in solar maximum. And we are continuing to experience X flares and actually the Schumann resonance, which is can be considered like our sort of collective fields energy, has spiked. And what this does practically, where we really see this, is the exposure, illumination, right? Think light, of the areas of our life that are incoherent, meaning that aren't working. So this solstice can sort of be these solstices where we have this polarity that we're working with of this extreme light and extreme darkness on the planet. You can't really lie. If there are places in your life that you may be staying in to keep the peace, or you're sitting on charged emotions of frustration or anger, if you're sitting on grief that you're not integrating, if you know that you are, say, like hanging out with or in relationship with people who are not truly aligned with where you're going, who you're wanting to be, and who you are in this moment, these inconsistencies and incongruences are very loud right now. It doesn't have to be drama, though. This is where that emotional elegance and integrity come into play. That because you see where you're shifting and things that maybe have aligned in the past no longer align now, it doesn't mean that it has to blow up, right? This is where you get to really go within in this potent time and think about how you want to address where you've changed. Now, this is also a time where you can be experiencing some extreme exhaustion and maybe even like lack of inspiration. And, for me personally, like I have a lot to do this week, but it's also like hard to do the things that maybe like a couple weeks ago were easy, because this is a lot of energy to move through consciously. It's very important that you hydrate during these times, especially with the solar flares. We are electric beings. When our planet is inundated with this photonic light from the sun, it can be very depleting. So that's electrolytes, magnesium, your potassium, stay on that. Of course, it's also going to mean more heat, extreme heat. So this can also trigger, just like, you think of like detoxing through your relationships, detoxing, it's also in the body. It's happening on like every level. The light pushing out what no longer belongs in your life and in your field. So I would encourage you guys to, you don't have to act on anything. We're also leading up to a new moon on June 25th. So the solstice is perfectly aligned with these days before the new moon, which are always a time to go within and look unflinchingly at our internal dynamics. This is where we want to look at what we're projecting on other people. Where do we need to take stock of maybe where we need to apologize, where we need to correct patterns that are actually harming us. This is where, if you're in addictive cycles, they can become very, like even more depleting, even more difficult to manage emotionally. And all of this is happening to show you what you have to let go of to step into what your future is calling for. In this, in the astrology, in the astrological chart of, the moment that the solstice peaks, we have some really cool alignments with the planet Jupiter. Planet Jupiter is all about expansion, luck. Sorry, we have lots going on here. It's about joy and happiness, but it can also be overdoing. It's where we overdo it, where we overpromise. And it's in aspects that are really going to be highlighting where we may be codependent on people, circumstances, substances. It's highlighting where we maybe overcompensate or overgive. With codependency, it's very much like, the unspoken theme is like, I will be here and give, but I'm also expecting XYZ in return for you to prop up my identity, right? These patterns are really this summer going to be up for review, because where we're heading and where all of this like cosmic weather pushes us is into self-sovereignty, where we are so trusting of our internal frequency and that connection that our internal frequency has to source energy, that we aren't dependent on other people to validate us emotionally, that we aren't dependent on what other people think of us to feel worthy. There's also going to be this really great energy that we can tap into of really being so clear, because of what you've experienced thus far, being so clear about what you don't want, both in your own patterns and in like how you relate to people, that you can jump into that positive reframing of that as to really holding a vision for what you do want. What kind of relationships do you want? What kind of relationship to yourself do you want? How do you want to feel about yourself? How do you want to feel about your best friend or your partner or your coworkers? So funny, as I've sat down to do this, like there's so many distractions coming up, and I think that's another thing we have to think about is, distractions. And in this solstice, it's a time to pull away from them. And with that, I'll see you guys later.